The research vessel Meridian's Reach held position against the swell, her hull a geometry of industrial purpose.
She maintained her station above coordinates that had consumed 18 months of research and speculation.
The investment represented the largest privately funded deep-sea recovery operation in the Indian Ocean's history.
As mission director, she bore responsibility for both scientific validity and the physical safety of everyone involved.
Their target lay 4,200 meters below, in sediment accumulated since the late 17th century. At 2,000 meters, the viewports groaned, an audible reminder of the forces at work. The biology began to thin. Organisms existed at the edge of sustainability.
The descent continued into the Hadal Zone, the realm beyond 4,000 meters.
The submersible settled onto the abyssal plain. They had arrived at the approximate coordinates.
The search pattern began, a spiral expanding from their landing point. The monotony exerted its own pressure.
After 3 hours, Rajesh noticed an anomaly on the side-scan sonar. A shape that appeared too regular to be natural geology. Rajesh activated the manipulator arm, excavating with archaeological patience.
Centimeter by centimeter, the object emerged, a curve that suggested a shoulder, proportions that implied human form.
The discovery confirmed their mission, but brought new challenges.
The work proceeded with archaeological patience, revealing the statue centimeter by centimeter.
Henrik monitored their life support systems, calculating the window remaining for work.
Rajesh documented it from every angle, creating a photographic record of context.
We have visual confirmation. The artifact is intact. Begin recovery sequence.
The surface crew initiated deployment of the recovery apparatus. Steel cables rated for 5 tons.
The cables took 40 minutes to complete their descent into the abyss.
Securing the lift slings required another hour of meticulous work.
Bronze aged in seawater became brittle. Too much stress could cause catastrophic failure.
Wait.
The cables tightened. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, gradually, it began to move.
The statue rose into the water column, illuminated by the submersible's lights. They climbed back through zones of increasing light, through the teeming life of the middle depths.
At 500 meters, fish of the euphotic zone began to appear, charismatic megafauna of the sunlit world.
The statue broke the surface first. sunlight striking metal that had known only darkness for 3 centuries.
The deck crew guided it into the recovery bay, lowering it onto a prepared cradle. Dr. Srinivasan emerged into sunlight that seemed harsh, into air that tasted impossibly fresh. Time mattered now. The conservation team moved with the urgency of surgeons.
She began with the gentlest approach, removing only the loosest material.
The work proceeded through the afternoon and into the evening, a gradual revelation.
As the coverings fell away, details emerged. The figure depicted Nataraja, Shiva as the cosmic dancer.
The iconography became clear. Creation, destruction, fearlessness, liberation, the cosmic dance.
As midnight approached, Dr. Srinivasan called the entire expedition team to the recovery deck. They stood in the presence of something that transcended its material composition.
The deck crew sensed they had been part of something that operated on a different register than salvage.
Dr. Srinivasan placed her hand on the statue's surface, feeling the reality of its substance.
The cosmic dancer had returned from the depths, ready to resume the eternal dance.
A reminder that some treasures, once lost, could be found again.
And so, the final secret of the tomb is unearthed. The golden scarab, preserved for millennia, now sees the light of day. She thought about the artisans who had worked copper and tin into an alloy that would survive a millennium.
She thought about the devotees who had worshipped before it, in a temple whose location might never be identified.
She thought about the thieves who had taken it, motivated by profit rather than appreciation.
She thought about the ship that had carried it toward Europe, but had foundered in a storm, sending it to rest on the abyssal plain, where it waited for 3 more centuries.
Gradually, people began to move, to return to the work that remained, the conservation, the documentation.
The mission had succeeded, not just mechanically, but spiritually.
The statue would eventually find its way to a museum, displayed with plaques explaining its provenance.
Conservators would work to preserve it for future generations.
But in this moment, on the deck of the Meridian's Reach, it belonged to the people who had brought it home.
The long process of study and preparation would continue for years.
Scholars would study its iconography, metallurgists would analyze its composition.
It would be displayed behind glass, a curiosity for millions.
But its original purpose was to inspire devotion, to point toward the infinite.
The work of human hands could survive when the hands themselves had returned to dust.
Beneath them, the abyssal plain continued its patient accumulation of sediment, grain by grain,
preserving whatever else might rest upon it for however long time required.
The mission carried a different gravity. The target lay in sediment accumulated since the late 17th century.
The deck crew had been active since 4 in the morning, their movements choreographed through years of similar operations. He adjusted their descent vector, engaging lateral thrusters that hummed through the hull.
At 400 meters, the last photons from the surface ceased penetrating. Absolute darkness enveloped them.
Rajesh monitored the sonar returns, watching for anomalies that might indicate metal rather than rock.
Dead whales occasionally sank into these regions, their carcasses becoming temporary ecosystems.
The monotony of the search exerted its own pressure, different from the physical pressure but equally taxing.
A shape that appeared too deliberate in its proportions to be natural geology.
The light swept across an irregular mound, rising perhaps half a meter above the surrounding plain.
The sediment clouded the water immediately, reducing visibility to near zero.
Forcing them to work slowly, allowing time for particles to settle between each movement.
Beneath the first layer of clay, the manipulator encountered resistance, a surface that suggested metal.
The work proceeded with archaeological patience, revealing the statue centimeter by centimeter.
Even under sediment and bacterial mats, she recognized the style, the serene power of the cosmic dancer.
Henrik monitored their life support systems with increasing attention, the margins growing narrow.
The cables took 40 minutes to complete their descent, their bright yellow marker floats creating islands of artificial color.
Explicitly to needs. The user prompt explicitly requests audio silence, and the audio description confirms silent.
Securing the lift slings required another hour of meticulous work.
The cables had to wrap around the statue at specific points that wouldn't stress any single structural element.
Finally, with the slings positioned and secured, with documentation complete, she gave the authorization.
Meridians reached. This is Bathyscaphe the 7. Recovery sling secured. You are clear to situate.
On the deck, the winch operators engaged their machinery.
Then, gradually, it began to move.
The statue rose into the water column, suspended beneath the cables, rotating slowly in the gentle current.
Dr. Srinivasan felt a pressure release in her chest.
An exhalation.
An exhalation.
They would surface together, emerging from the abyss in parallel.
At 3,000 meters, bioluminescent organisms began to appear again, responding to the disturbance.
At 1,000 meters, daylight began to penetrate as a diffuse glow.
Henrik could begin venting ballast more aggressively, allowing them to rise faster.
The statue broke the surface first, water streaming from its bronze surface, sunlight striking metal.
Even covered in marine growth, the statue commanded attention, the skill of its craftsmanship evident.
The submersible surfaced minutes later, its mission complete.
The hatch unsealed with a hiss of equalizing pressure. They emerged into sunlight that seemed harsh.
The cosmic dancer had returned from the depths.
As the coverings fell away, details emerged. The figure depicted Nataraja, Shiva, as the cosmic dancer, the drum in the upper right hand, representing creation.
The flame in the upper left hand, representing destruction.
The lower right hand, raised in the Abhaya Mudra gesture of fearlessness.
The figure danced within a ring of flames, representing the cosmos,
and stood upon a demon dwarf, representing ignorance crushed beneath divine knowledge.
They assembled around the statue, perhaps 40 people representing a dozen nationalities, united by months of work.
No one spoke. The moment existed beyond language.
Rajesh, raised in the Hindu tradition, recognized the theological precision.
The deck crew sensed they had been part of something that operated on a different register.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Then, gradually, people began to move, to speak, to return to the work that remained.
The dance would continue long after all of them had departed, leaving behind only the work of their hands.
The mission was complete.
Some treasures, once lost, could be found again if one was willing to descend into darkness and search with patience. The coordinates had consumed 18 months of archival research, satellite bathymetry, and speculative reconstruction. A young African-American male graduate researcher cross-referencing trade routes identified an anomaly, a sonar shadow too geometric to be natural. The work proceeded with archaeological patience, the manipulator removing sediment in careful scrapes.
The craftsmanship revealed itself in details that analysis would study for years.
He adjusted their descent vector, engaging lateral thrusters that moved them horizontally across the water column.
We have positive visual ID. Beginning Phase 2 documentation.
Deployment successful.
The surface crew initiated deployment of the recovery apparatus. When they arrived, they settled onto the sediment 20 meters from the statue.
Rajesh piloted the submersible to the cables and used the manipulator arms to grasp them.
The cables had to wrap around the statue at specific points, beneath the arms, around the torso.
Too much stress in the wrong place could cause catastrophic failure.
Finally, with the slings positioned and secured, with documentation complete.
The cables tightened slowly, taking up slack, the tension increasing. Then, gradually, it began to move, lifting from the depression it had occupied. Sediment falling away from its surface like a curtain drawn back to reveal what had been hidden.
Henrik began the submersible's own ascent, rising alongside the recovery cables.
Strange creatures migrated vertically through hundreds of meters each day, following the light.
The temperature increased degree by degree as they rose through the thermocline.
At 1,000 meters, daylight began to penetrate the water as a diffuse glow.
The battery charge decreased, the margins growing narrow. At 500 meters, fish that belonged to the euphotic zone began to appear. Sunlight striking metal that had known only darkness for 3 centuries.
The deck team stood ready at the A-frame crane, preparing to receive the statue.
The statue broke the surface first, water streaming from its bronze surface.
The deck crew guided it toward the recovery bay, the crane swinging it over the ship's rail.
Lowering it with millimeter precision onto a padded cradle prepared to receive it. The hatch unsealed with a hiss. She emerged into sunlight that seemed harsh after hours in controlled illumination.
The conservation team moved with the urgency of surgeons, spraying the statue with a mist of fresh water.
Harder concretions required more aggressive treatment, mechanical tools used with archaeological precision.
The surface showed the hammer marks of its original creation, the file strokes of the artisans.
As midnight approached and the cleaning neared completion, Dr. Srinivasan called the expedition team.
They had succeeded. The mission was complete.
Gradually, people began to move, to return to the work that remained.
The cosmic dancer had returned from the depths, ready to resume the eternal dance.
a reminder that some things lost could be found, that some erasures could be reversed. The work of human hands could survive even when the hands themselves had returned to dust centuries ago. If one was willing to descend into darkness, to search with patience, to believe the weight of centuries could be lifted,